All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I have gone over the Quackit.com Bootstrap 4 tutorial, and now I'm changing. So instead of tutorial here, I've got examples. And these examples, if I counted correctly, are broken down into like 29 of the 32 things that were in the tutorial. Now, in the tutorial, remember, the tutorial started with what is Bootstrap and getting started. So those aren't in there, and there's something else that must be missing too. Not sure exactly what or the templates probably, but I don't know. And I don't really care because, like I said, I'm going to be going over the examples, not every one, but we'll go over some of them. Okay? All right, fix layout. So again, notice what we can do if we want to. We can highlight the code, just paste it in here. All right, now we've got it in. Okay, example of a fixed width container which is set using the container class. You see the size of it, and you can also see that if we do come in here, and I guess again I'll have to run this in Edge. All right. So you can see that it does the best it can. Once I get to a certain breakpoint here to give me some margin, and after I get done with that, then it all collapses together. All right, so that's the first example. In the second example, I believe all that is changed is that it changes from container to container fluid. So we've got a fluid in here, but the big thing is this. Before that said container. Other than that, I don't really think there are any differences between these. Okay, let's save it, run it, and you'll notice that even here, see how it's taking up 100% regardless of the size. There is no margin. It is fluid. It is running through the width of the entire container. All right, so that's a couple quick examples on containers. Grids. Again, at the beginning I'll go through most of these, but as we go on, there's just not enough time to go through all of them. So you'll notice it says column small, and you might think that's not really anything. Well, what happens when I come in here and I start changing the size? Notice what it looks like now. And notice what it looks like as we start flattening it down. Eventually, this is just the first one here that's got 12 in there, and everything becomes one column. So it looks different when you get to certain breakpoints. So I'm still here. That must be a large tablet. Probably getting into the desktop range here, etc. All right, so you can see as I squish it or flatten it out, how it gets to change. On a small device, now it did change a little, you probably couldn't tell, but looks very similar to what we saw before. All right. Again, I'm going to go through probably about 7 of these categories on each crack here, do this over 4 lessons. Typography. Again, notice there's just too many to go over here. So let's grab a couple of them. Let's look at headings. I would strongly suggest that you do exactly what I'm doing, and that is go in there and copy in many of these examples and just take a look at them. All right, remember you can always right mouse click and choose View Page Source too. All right, these do not have heading classes set up. These are just the standards. So let's look at the same example, but with heading classes set up. So how is that going to change? Again, in here, H1, H2, H3, etc. Now, class equal H1 or H2 or H3 or H4 or H5 or H6. All right, so it's got some of the built-in stuff, so to speak. Lead text, we've talked about how lead text is going to be a little bit bigger in size than your typical paragraph text. So our lead text, notice this is the article lead, and this is normal text underneath it. All right, this is not in a Jumbotron either. Most people associate lead text with being in a Jumbotron. It does not have to be. So hopefully you can look at that and realize, blow this up a bit, how the lead text is bigger than normal size text. Remember that the default size for normal text is 16 pixels. That's the Bootstrap 4 default. All right, let's look at an unordered list. Let's have it unstyled first. And you can see exactly what it looks like. It's got some default margin put in, and it's unstyled, meaning there are no dots or squares or circles or anything there. If we look at the unordered list inline, notice how it changes. That's, again, probably what you'd end up using if you wanted a nav bar to run up across the side, the front of the screen. That's one, and I should say that's one way you can do it. Remember, there is a nav bar class, which we probably will look at in here anyway. All right, jumping down to tables. Here's a default table. And I want to show you something that I consider to be very interesting about this. If you look here, and I might have shown you this before, you've got container fluid, class equal table. Okay, everybody sees it. So I'm going to go run this. And there's our default table. Nothing big about it. All right. If we take the class equal table out of it, and we look at it again, let's see how it changes. Okay, you notice that this is a regular HTML table with no formatting, whereas here with the default formatting in Bootstrap, you can see what you get without you having to add anything to it. All right. And there, let's look at the responsive tables. I want to look at the ones that I think matter the most in here. Now, you may or may not have noticed this, but here's my table, and notice that when I start to cut it down, it tries to be responsive. It's responsive maybe up to there, but now it's not. Technically, it's not really responsive at all. right, but if you look here, we've got class equal table. Now we've got class equal table, table responsive. And I believe other than that, we've got virtually the same example we had before. So if we refresh, okay, this looks totally non-responsive. It has been saved. Table, table responsive. It was saved. Let's look at their example. Not a great example. Again, let me close a bunch of this. All right, and continue on. Forms, go through a few of these. So far we've gone through containers, grids, typography, and tables. Let's go on to forms here. Here's your basic form. Remember a couple things about working with forms in Bootstrap? Those include that your input elements are of type form control, and your field set is of type form group. All right, again, form control. Your button has got a button default class, just so you see, so you know, and I know you know this already, but so here's the standard form right there. Is it responsive without us doing anything? No. Well, yes it is. I'm sorry. Okay, see how it goes down? So yes it is. Now we could go in if we wanted to. Again, you've already seen this. We could change this to primary, for example. It's going to look the same, except look at the color of the button and see how it changes. The author talked about that in the book, all right, or in the tutorial, and talked about when you start to use, all the different color stuff that you can use in here. All right, let's continue on. Validation styles. And what do we have? Password. We got warning in here. Well, let's run it. That's always the best way to find out what these things look like. Okay. And you notice the different icons, the success icon, the warning icon, and the danger icon. Let's look at some inline checkboxes and radio buttons. Somehow I managed to close Edge. So let me grab this, do a run. There you can see what it looks like. Again, as much as possible, it tries to be a little bit at least responsive. All right. So, containers, grids, typography, tables, forms, a couple things with custom forms, and then buttons, and then we will stop this lecture. All right, so custom forms, checkboxes, pretty simple, but they're just a different color. Just to show you, though, for completeness, there's the color. And again, I don't really feel the need to go and just show you the same colors, but show you them for radio buttons, etc. All right. All right, last thing, buttons. Remember our contextual styles. So this is what we get. You've seen this before, I know. Primary button, secondary button, info button, success button, warning button, link button, and hyperlink. Okay. I think that's about enough for right here. So when I come back, I'll pick it up with images in just a couple minutes.